I'd like to call to order the February 4th, 7 p.m. City Council regular meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Here.
Council President Henderson. Here. Councilor Grant is absent. Councilor Folsom.
Here.
Councilor Butterfield.
Here.
Councilor Langer.
Here.
Councilor Clark.
Here.
Thank you.
Prior to the consent agenda, we will be removing under new business city recorder performance evaluation. We haven't completed all we're doing on it, and it will be brought back at the next meeting. Consent agenda, approval of January 7, 2014 City Council meeting minutes, approval of January 21st, 2014 City Council meeting minutes, Resolution 2014-004 appointing Jennifer Harlow to the Cultural Arts Commission, Resolution 2014-005 appointing Ramin Rukabash to the Cultural Arts Commission, Resolution 2014-006, authorizing the city manager to sign an operating agreement between the City of Sherwood and Meals on Wheels People Incorporated.
I move consent.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Presentations. City Auditor Rob Moody with TKW CPAs and Consultant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Appreciate the chance to be with you tonight and be on your agenda. I know you've got a full agenda tonight. I guess a couple of things to kind of lead off. We just finished the audit. Well, we finished the field work a little while ago in terms of the city audit. The audit's been completed, delivered, and filed as of last week. There was obviously some turnover in the finance department this last year. You had a transition with the finance director. Some of those types of things lent itself to being a little bit of a delay on the issuing of the financial statements. But all said, the audit process went really well this year. Your staff, your finance director, the team in the finance department, your entire crew is to be complimented really in terms of being ready for us, being responsive to our requests. All of those things working together really make for a pretty smooth audit process, and I wanted to make sure that you all know that we appreciate working with your team. So thank you for that, and thank you to Julie. A couple things then. I want to go over a couple of documents with you in just sort of at a summary level. The first is the letter to the City Council dated January 31, 2014. And this is what we call our SAS 114, or Statement on Auditing Standards number 114, which is one of our professional standards that requires certain communications with you as those charged with governance from us, your independent CPAs. And by providing this in writing, we've met the requirements, but I'd like to go through this in a little bit of detail with you just to make you aware of some things. First, it talks about the responsibilities of both the city and us. It talks about the fact that the city implemented some new GASB statements. You can read those. I'm not gonna drag you through those GASB standards. It talks also a little bit about some of the estimates that are required to put together financial statements for a city. You can't put together financial statements for an organization like this without making some estimates and some judgments, and we concur with all of that on the part of city staff. Pages 3 and 4 of that letter highlight some audit adjustments that were necessary as a result of the audit. Working with staff, all of those adjustments were made and posted, and as a result, we're able to give you that unmodified or clean opinion on your financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance that we can give you in terms of being your independent CPA. And then towards the middle of that document, or the back of the letter, I guess, page 5 starts and talks about several new statements that are coming. there's a number of new GASB statements that will be implemented by the city over the next couple of years. Probably the one that's generating the most talk or the most buzz, if you will, in terms of government finance is GASB statement number 68. I call it one half of the evil pension twins. GASB 67, the first of that pair has to do, that's guidance for, say, PERS. It's guidance for the plans themselves. GASB 68 is reporting guidance for the member or participant governments. I guess I want to touch on three things with respect to this statement, and I'll be brief. But the first is, what it really requires is that the city will have to put its unfunded actuarial liability related to PERS, your share of the overall PERS liability, on the face of your financial statements. It'll be a liability. It'll likely be a big number. It's not much you can do anything about. The truth is you just have to report it. That said, it's not unreasonable to believe that that will have a negative impact on the reporting, just the reporting of your equity for the city as a whole. It doesn't have any impact on you at all operationally, and I want to be clear about that. But from a reporting standpoint, it's going to have an impact on how you report equity for the city. You're not alone in that. Every organization, every government's dealing with the same thing. The question I get asked a lot is, well, what impact is that going to have on our ratings? Everybody wants to know what's the impact by the rating agencies. From the conversations I've been able to have with some of those rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, the impact is probably nothing because you're not alone. Everybody is going to be at the same playing field. Okay? The only thing that would negatively impact you as a city is if you had no idea what was going on with the standard and didn't implement it, and that's just not going to happen. In terms of implementing that guidance for fiscal year end 2015, not 14, there's a lot to be done. PERS is struggling with how to provide the information to the local governments. The audit community is looking forward to some guidance in how to audit that information, and the local governments are still looking for guidance in terms of how to report it. Everybody's working together. I got an email last night that there's a bill they're trying to introduce some legislation during this short session, and it looks like maybe they're going to get it done, that will allow PERS, the statutory authority, to actually generate this information and pay for it. Right now, they're statutorily prohibited from doing that. So anyway, everybody's working together on this, and I guess just stay tuned. There will be a lot more information to come. But that's GASB Statement 68 seems to be the one that everybody's talking about. So I wanted to make sure that you had a little bit of an update on that. Are there any questions about any of that or anything? I realize you're just getting these documents tonight. So the other thing I want to tell you is if you have a chance to go through these and at some point in the future you want to talk about it or you want to sit down for a few minutes, I'll be happy to do that. Just get a hold of me and we can either talk on the phone or have coffee or something. I'll be happy to go through any of the details that you want to.
Okay, just one quick question. Why is the state doing that, or why are they requiring us to put that on our budget?
It's actually not the state, Mr. Mayor. It's a governmental accounting standards board that's requiring it, and the thought process behind it is a true liability for pension out into the future that's been earned by employees and will continue to be earned by employees. So the fact that the liability exists, it's hard to argue that it's not a real liability, so they think it should be presented with all the other liabilities on the financial statements. It's been a for-profit thing for a long time. So governments are sort of catching up to that standard in terms of reporting. All right. Real quickly, in terms of the financial statements for the city, these are your financial statements. They're prepared by your staff. The only parts of this that belong to me are the two reports in there, the one at the beginning and the one at the end that I signed. You can, again, be very proud of the financial statements. It's not an easy task to generate these. You take a lot of the information from your accounting system itself and go through the reconciliations and go through the machinations, if you will, to generate external financial reports. So I want to call your attention to a couple of things. Again, our opinion at the beginning of the document, it's what we call an unmodified opinion, which, again, clean opinion means that we've done enough work to satisfy ourselves that there are no material errors in these financial statements. The document that, and I guess I could probably give you page references, that'd probably be helpful, huh? Beginning on page 4, then, is what we refer to as management's discussion and analysis. If you don't look at anything else in this document, I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time with that piece. It's written in non-financial language for non-financial people, really. It gives you a little bit of insight as to where you were last year, where you finished the year, and how you got from point A to point B. There's some real good information in there about kind of what happened with the city, and it's divided into some sections that, GASB says you need to talk about, and they tend to be the things that are most interesting to the people that are in charge of this stuff. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that as you have a chance. Beyond that, the financial statements in terms of structure look very much like what you've seen in the past. There's no major changes to any of the statements with the exception of page 15. The statement here changed from the statement of net assets to the statement of net position. Ooh, big change. But again, that was the implementation of GASB Statement 63. It changed the title, and GASB Statement 65 that's coming this year will change some of the way things are classified within that statement. Okay. After those basic financial statements, you've got your notes to financial statements, and those offer a lot of good information to help explain some of the numbers and some of the items that are up front there. At the very back, starting on page 72, there's a report there that we're required to issue anytime we do a municipal audit under Oregon minimum standards for audits of municipal corporations. Basically, there's 7 or 8 required compliance items that we look at every year, and this is our report indicating that we had no exceptions in any of those compliance areas. It's things like, are you invested in the right things in terms of what investments does the city have? Any budget law issues? Did you follow purchasing requirements, et cetera, et cetera? And those 7 or 8 items are bulleted there on page 72. We had no exceptions at all, which might surprise you. That's less common than you might think. It's pretty common for us to identify a budget law violation, for example, that somebody overexpended their budget. We just didn't have any of that here, and again, that's a compliment to your staff and the work that they do. Are there any questions specifically about the financial statements themselves? Again, I realize you're just seeing this stuff, but okay. The urban renewal financial statements, I believe you also have, again, the same reports, same kind of documents are in there, so I'm not going to go through that one in any detail. Again, a clean opinion on the urban renewal agency. Finally, I'd like to end with this shorter letter that is dated also January 31st, 2014 to the council. And what this is called this is our SAS 115 letter. Everything's got a number with us. Go figure. But what this is required communications to you from us when we identify an internal control weakness that rises to a certain level. And the definitions are here in the letter. Basically, a material weakness in internal control is an item where it's reasonable to believe that an internal control weakness could occur that could potentially result in a material misstatement to the financial statements. It doesn't mean that it did. It means it could. By virtue of the fact that there were audit adjustments that were required that were material, we identified a material weakness in internal control. Something happened that allowed those errors to be made that needed to be corrected. What I tell everybody is the fact that we identified a material weakness is not the issue. What the issue is what you do with that information once you have it. We've had those conversations with staff. We're satisfied and comfortable that staff has a plan to correct these issues, and worked to identify them and has a plan in place to kind of go forward. So anyways, we identified three things there. One was around the review of the financial statements once they're prepared. And then a couple had to do with capital assets reporting and some things involved in capturing information regarding to capital asset transactions and the reporting thereof. That's really where the issues were. And again, we're pretty satisfied that we won't have to bring these back as issues next year. When we do our audit next year, we will look and see what staff did and close that loop. That's part of our audit procedures. Are there any questions about any of those items? Wow, you guys made this easy on me this year. That's really all I had. That completes my presentation for this evening.
Any questions from council? Council President?
One, yeah. Back to the mayor's comment about the GASB number 68, which requires us to list our unfunded PERS amount. So that's a number we get from the state, right, from PERS. And that number projected out is how we establish our PERS rate for 2 budget years? Okay, so every 2 years it's changed based on our unfunded liability.
That's a piece of the calculation.
Right, a piece of the calculation, and then our other liability. So they want us to put that into our budget and our financial reports, correct?
No. Actually, it won't impact you budgetarily. The only thing that would impact your budgets is the amounts that you pay for your rates.
Right, the rates.
That liability is simply a reporting requirement at the entity-wide level. Again, I want to make it clear that it's not an operational issue, it's a
Right.
reporting issue.
So where will we record it?
On the you won't actually record it in your financial system. The only place it will be reported is in this book.
Okay. And it'll just be recorded as a whole liability?
Yeah.
It won't be parceled out by department or?
That's correct.
Okay.
And it also, there'll be a footnote that describes it all as well.
Okay.
That help?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rob.
Our next will be public hearings.
Mayor Michelle, prior to starting, I'll need to read the public hearing statement.
Okay.
The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear testimony on an item on the agenda, ordinance 2014001, amending the comprehensive plan and zoning map to redesignate a parcel from general commercial to high-density residential. The purpose of the hearing is to receive testimony on the above said item. The hearing will be conducted as follows for this evening: is to hear a staff report, questions by the council for staff. The public hearing will then be open, and the applicant will begin providing testimony, and we'll have 30 minutes for that testimony. That time will be divided between the testimony and rebuttal afterwards. The next testimony will be received from persons in favor of the application with a 4-minute limit, persons opposed to the application with a 4-minute limit. Rebuttal from the applicant will follow. The hearing will then be closed and no other comments will be received. Final questions from staff will follow, and that will be followed by questions of the council. A decision may be made by the city council at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain in the future. If the matter is continued to a date certain in the future, this will be the only notice of that date you will receive. If you wish to speak, please fill out the testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the mayor. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded. In deciding whether to approve or deny the application, the city council must consider whether the applicant meets the relevant approval criteria found in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report and are available in the room this evening. The written testimony and oral argument must be directed towards those criteria or other criteria the person speaking believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient detail to afford the City Council, the applicant, or the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the City Council to respond to those issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I would like to ask the members of the City Council to disclose any ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate or abstain from the hearing. Nothing? No, thank you. We can now get the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Mayor Middleton. So we have two issues before the Council this evening. I'm going to talk about the first one, and then we'll come back and do this again for the second ordinance. The first issue before the Council this evening is a zone change on a property from general commercial, and the request is for high-density residential by the applicant. The subject property that we're talking about this evening is located right here. It's on kind of the northwestern side of Highway 99W by the Meineke intersection. This is Cedar Brook Way, located right here. It's a right in, right out, and this is Meineke. The property is about 5.77 acres, and it's relatively flat with about 2.75 acres to be developable. The site was originally part of a 3-lot minor land partition in 2005 with the development of the roundabout. So here's a look at our zoning map overlay of the property. Again, the property is located right here. You can see that surrounding property is some high-density residential to the directly to the east. There's a planned unit development, residential development to the west, and to the south is primarily zoned general commercial. And the high-density residential that's proposed allows for both single-family and multifamily units with a density of 16.8 to 24 units per acre, and this particular site would likely come in the range between 46 and 66 units. An example of some high-density residential properties that we have in the area is the Vittner townhomes that is directly kind of across the street. We have the apartments there directly to the east of that, and Sherwood Village is also zoned high-density residential. Got a lot of things going on here. So when we look at a zone change, we look at the criteria to see that it makes sure it complies with our local plans, the TSP, our current development code, and the comprehensive plan. There needs to be an existing need for the uses and the zoning that's proposed, that the application is timely considering the pattern of development, and other lands just are not available for the use that the applicant has proposed. Taking a look at that in a little bit of detail for the city, the current commercial property is 130 acres within the city. About 28 acres are available, or roughly 22%. The table is the dark orange is the existing, and the vacant is the lighter orange. When we look at the high-density residential, there's approximately 121 acres within the city, with about 10 acres are vacant, less than 8%, and roughly there's no property of this size, proposed size, that's zoned high-density residential that's vacant at this time. Here's a zoomed-out look at the city with vacant residential, not just high density, but very low density, all the way to high density within the city, and also a portion that's not in the city yet. The Brookman area down here has some larger parcels that are also that could be available within the urban growth boundary, as well as this property up here. But you can see that we have quite a limited amount of these larger parcels available for residential development currently within the city. Here's a look at the vacant commercial properties, generally located along 99W and on both sides nearby this development. Also, some of the criteria that we look at with the comprehensive plan amendment is there some transportation planning rule consistency, and we look at the different comprehensive plan policies that would affect this zone change. So some of the comments that were received at the Planning Commission hearing that we had in December were generally supportive or neutral from the zone change from commercial to residential. Because in this case, the commercial property the current property is located away from 99W, and it doesn't have the eyes on 99W that generally commercial properties would have. Also, we heard from people that they like the idea of a less intense development nearby other residential properties, and that this kind of fit the bill. There were some concerns about traffic, but when that was the traffic reports that are in your packet materials show that less traffic is generally generated in residential uses over commercial issues. Also, parking issues were raised. We all know about the situation with the parking along that area. And although the parking issues are raised when we get any development would have to comply with our current parking requirements, it's not an issue that directly affects whether a zone change is applicable at this time. And once an application comes in, they will need to be compliant with whatever regulations that we have in place for parking, and it will be addressed through that application process at that time. Also, the school capacity issues were mentioned at the hearing as well, and by state law, we cannot mandate really whether that is part of the decision-making process. We have been working closely with the schools so that they know what development is proposed in the area and whether it's an issue that needs to be addressed system-wide throughout this entire school district and the capacity issues for the whole area. So with that, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the zone change. They thought that the site was suitable for residential over commercial zoning. They saw that there was a general need for smaller lot, single-family attached and detached homes within the area, and thought that this site would be suitable for that. They also were supportive of finding that excluded multifamily developments on this property, and that was part of their recommendation. And in considering that that wasn't part of the initial staff recommendation, because high-density residential generally allows multifamily developments, they found that the information in the economic analysis wouldn't be supportive of apartments, that the analysis showed specifically these single-family homes were where the need was suitable for the city. But it also ties up the property so that not all of the generally permitted uses are available for a particular site, is the other side of the coin there. With that, in your packet materials are the proposed ordinance and also Exhibit 1, which is the Planning Commission recommendation. Exhibits 1A through 1H are all of the information that the Planning Commission used to make their decision. We have the information from the applicant as well. And at this time, I'll take any questions that you might have, or
Any questions?
No.
No?
Maybe later. Okay.
Okay, now the applicant will have 30 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Mike Serbone. I'm a land use planner with Cardno. I have with me this evening Bill Reed, who's an economist. He'll talk a little bit about the need. We're just going to talk to you right now solely about the zone change, why we feel that's appropriate, and be available to answer questions. The zone change is a little more straightforward than the other applications for you this evening. We're able to actually look at your comprehensive plan. We're able to measure things in your community in terms of what the trips from the site will be and look at what the needs and aspirations of your community are, and then set a pretty straightforward situation before you for you to look at and consider. The text amendment is much more up to your discretion and how you feel that fits in with your community. So the zone change is more straightforward. I'll go briefly over the transportation piece. As Michelle said, what we did is we looked at the site and we analyzed it for the transportation planning rule. And so the transportation planning rule in the state of Oregon requires us to look at the property, and we need to assess the property for what the reasonable worst-case scenario for development that could occur on the site under the current zoning, and then we look at what the reasonable worst-case scenario of what could occur on the site under the proposed zoning. So under the existing zoning, it's commercial. We looked at a 0.25 FAR, which is a floor area ratio on the site, and we considered essentially a commercial shopping mall with a fast food restaurant tenant. Under that approach, you're going to have significantly more trips in and out of the system at the PM and AM peak hours than when you would have a traditional residential development. Under the residential development, we looked at, I believe, 66 residential units on the site. So that's kind of the first test is if the zone change is approved, is it going to break your transportation system or make your transportation system function outside of what you've anticipated in your transportation system plan? And so under that review, it does not force your system out of whack. And that was confirmed by your staff as well as the Oregon Department of Transportation. The second piece, which Michelle had a good graphic up there, is it appropriate? Do you have enough commercial zone property in your community right now? Do you have enough residential zone property in your community right now? Do you need additional residential zone property? And so Bill is going to talk a little bit more about why we feel that that's appropriate. And then I'll finish up with some of the locational factors for why we believe, as you've seen in your community, the site has not developed since right along 99W. So I'll let Bill talk a little bit about the need.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak about the proposed zone change before you. Yeah, basically, my charge was to take a look at over a standard 20-year land use planning period, what type of residential land needs are you looking at, particularly from the standpoint of for sale home ownership, whether it's attached type row houses, townhouses, that sort of thing, or it's detached single-family homes, but for sale home ownership. And under conservative assumptions over a 20-year period, the city is looking at the majority of new population, new households moving to Sherwood looking for homes for sale in the income ranges of $35,000 a year at a low to as high as $100,000 a year. For a typical home price for sale, those households would be looking for homes that are priced as low as $150,000, which would typically be an attached type housing, housing unit, and on the high end up to a $400,000 single detached single-family home. So some on the more high end, but honestly, the single biggest growth in households for Sherwood for the next 20 years really are in what we would consider more middle-of-the-road, moderately priced homes, which throughout the metro area is being met with attached single-family or detached with relatively smaller lots in kind of a higher density community type development or infill, for instance, in Portland, but in a suburban location, very much a mix of higher density residential, detached single-family, and attached, all for sale. Over the next 20 years, roughly 780 housing units for sale will be needed in the city of Sherwood to meet that demand for households who would be looking to buy here during that time period. We basically taking a look at the supply of land inventory that's currently zoned high-density residential. I think it was pointed out that there are roughly 8 acres available, gross acres, but once you account for, I think there was some that was publicly owned, when you account for natural resource issues on site, wetlands, what have you, we actually found, going through your inventory, there's really only just under 3 acres of actually buildable high-density residential land, which is highly insignificant compared to the amount of demand or need you're going to see from households who are going to look to buy a home in Sherwood over the next 20 years. So, having said all that, the basic numbers are that the amount of demand from households moving here is significantly greater than the amount of land that you have available to meet that need. And there's certainly nothing in terms of anything of size that will allow a builder to come in and build homes of different sizes and prices for the different household demographics that are looking to move here and buy a home over time. And so that's basically my finding.
Thanks, Bill. So, as Bill said, you have a need within your community. The types of folks that are looking for that type of housing are going to be folks that are small families that are just starting out looking for entry level. And then you're also going to have people that are looking to downsize. The kids are leaving the house. They're looking for something that maybe has a smaller yard, don't really want to deal with the yard work. And then you're going to have some folks that are in my demographic who may be single and like to do things on the weekend. So again, don't want to maintain a yard. So the other application that's here this evening, and we'll probably spend a lot more time talking to you about that one, because again, it's not as straightforward and there were more concerns raised at the Planning Commission, is the text amendment for the planned unit development. And that is pretty integral to the development plans for the site because again, what the client and the land developer intend to do with the piece of property out there is build single-family detached homes and attached homes on small lots. And right now, your current PUD ordinance requires 5,000 square foot minimum lots, which would effectively preclude that. So in summary, there's a need for the use within the community. You guys have a demonstrated need for those types of residential units. The location of the area, as noted previously, is directly next to high-density residential. It's an area that's screened from the 99 corridor. It's not an area that many retailers or restaurateurs are going to want to open up a business because it doesn't have that access and visibility off the corridor. And I think that's why you've seen it vacant for as long as you have. It has good infrastructure right up to it. It has about as good an access as you can get off the 99 corridor. And again, it's sat vacant. And that's because we believe it's more appropriately developed in a residential manner. The high-density residential, if you look at existing residential development patterns in the area, it makes sense based on what's adjacent to it, and then you look at the gradation of density as you move out further to the north and to the west. So with that, we're more than happy to answer any questions, or we can come back during the rebuttal and answer questions.
We can wait till rebuttal. I guess nobody has anything right now.
Thanks, sir.
20 minutes anyway. Do I have anybody that's going to speak in favor? Mara?
Mara Broadhurst, 28440 Southwest Lad Hill Road, Sherwood, Oregon. Sherwood has never been fond of apartments, but rezoning general commercial land to HDR, then not allow apartments, is the most creative deterrent yet. The building fees have always discouraged apartment builders in the past, and developers preferred the more lucrative single-family lots. The first vision the City Council voted for in this area was to rezone the land the Cedar Creek apartments were later built on from HDR to general commercial. Combined with the existing Handley general commercial, it would create 20 level acres capable of attracting prime general commercial use. This didn't happen, and the next approved plan for the Handley commercial was for 2 Class A office buildings, which are built, and an elder care facility with its own parking provided on site below the building. That plan partially happened, leaving the area's best, maybe not perfect, 5 acres of commercial capable and ready to develop and provide services. We own commercial property in the neighborhood, and the other rezones to general commercial have made development in this area hard to get started. This will further stifle development and devalue the other commercial land in the process. I guess we're supposed to be happy about this rezone eliminating some of our competition, but commercial development depends on location and needs other businesses to attract and make a success of the area, especially at major intersections. A lot of public money was spent improving the 99W intersection, building the traffic circle, and city paybacks for the built section of Cedarbrook Way. Taking advantage of the distressed fire sale commercial price and infrastructure improvements, then rezoning and amending the code to allow the smallest single-family lots possible to maximize profits makes this application feasible, but not in the city's best interest. The policy we were always told was that no rezone from 99 commercial land to residential was warranted, and that any residential use on commercial land would be secondary or behind the commercial use. This rezone changes what the improvements were built for and the existing bonded for residential inventory. Does this impact the ability of land already zoned residential in the area to develop as before? Please make sure to protect those rights first before granting new entitlements. We received notice of the latest revision site plan for a 66-lot HDR PUD. 18 are detached on about 2,200 square foot lots, with 2 hanging off the wetland buffer side and accessed by the traffic circle. The remaining 48 are attached row houses on about 1,500 square foot lots. There are many street, sidewalk, and setback variances the PUD will allow, and new issues with the alley and the substandard street connecting Meineke and Cedarbrook Way. Pulling on and off Meineke Parkway from this street will confuse merging 99W traffic. Clogging up the rest of Cedarbrook Way with parking might make up for the lost spaces from the McFall subdivision driveways and developing the traffic circle stubs, but not provide for this new impact too. If this rezone is allowed, every advantage an HDR PUD can give a developer will be made use of. Does this really help the problems or benefit Sherwood? Don't sacrifice a valuable commercial location when there's other land zoned residential where the idea of smaller lots can be entertained. Maybe the city will zone some of its 20 acres on Elwert for such a project, or the land in the Brookman Concept Plan zoned MDRH. Wasn't any land in the recently annexed UGB land around Edie and Elwert zoned for a higher density where a smaller lot PUD could be allowed? This rezone will increase the area's problems and make them permanent. Smaller lots should be allowed and planned for, but not here. Please keep the best 5-level acres of commercial in the area most likely to develop next, with greater benefit to the city and its citizens than an overcrowded subdivision in an overcrowded neighborhood with no amenities or retail services. The schools are studying the problems. What did the police think of the overcrowding? Will this need immediate calming? How will we protect Cedar Creek from yet another plat that shows more houses on the wetland side of Cedarbrook Way? The Handleys donated pristine wetlands for all people to enjoy and always hoped for an Olive Garden. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have no other comments? Call for the rebuttal time.
Close the public hearing?
No,
Or- Yeah.
Do you need to close it? Public hearing's closed now? Or no?
No. Did we ask for anybody in opposition?
Yeah. Ask for
I mean,
both.
in favor?
Ask for anybody.
Okay.
That's all we got, yeah. Go ahead.
Thanks, sir. So understand Ms. Broadhurst's concerns. Again, the area has been zoned commercial. It is not seeing any activity. Typically, people who want to maximize the value of their property would rezone it to commercial. Commercial can typically bring you better values on the property. In this instance, the property is located in such a situation, while it is flat, it doesn't have the access and visibility to the 99 corridor that really would make that a viable commercial piece of property. The concerns about the planned unit development, those are valid concerns. A planned unit development is a process where an applicant goes through and requests variances or adjustments to your standards. The text amendment that will be before you later on this evening, I think addresses those concerns very well, because it provides you as the community a lot more discretion on how you issue a planned unit development decision. Right now you have clear and objective standards in your code that an applicant would need to meet. Under the proposed revisions, the applicant would actually have to demonstrate compliance with your comprehensive plan, which would be all applicable goals and policies that the reviewing authority sees appropriate to apply to the site. So it actually affords the reviewing body, in this case, which would be your planning commission, ultimately you if there's an appeal, more discretion in how you allow for those deviations from your code. The applicant would have to demonstrate that the planned unit development is actually meeting the goals and policies and the vision for your community that's articulated in your comprehensive plan. The reason I wrote it that way is because I do believe it gives you, the community, a lot more control over how that land use application is reviewed and approved within your community. Under the current planned unit development approach, there is some discretion. It allows for deviations from the standards, but it does not tie back directly to your comprehensive plan. So understand Ms. Broadhurst's concerns. Again, I think we've demonstrated that in a 20-year planning horizon, you have a need for high-density residential. High-density residential, as most land use planners know, is best suited in close proximity to commercial services, clustered in other areas where you have that type of development, and putting it on the edge of your urban growth boundary or out in an area that's undeveloped is not probably the most appropriate location for that area. And again, you'd still be left with a piece of vacant commercial property on your core. I'm available to answer any questions that you guys may have. We can bring Bill up if you have questions about, again, the need and why we think it's appropriate for the rezone.
Questions? Good.
Do you have any preliminary idea of what type of facilities you're going to be building, what they look like?
We do. We were going to show this to you as part of the text amendment proposal because, again, that's really strongly tied to why we requested the text amendment, that minimum lot size and that removal from your planned unit development ordinance. And so we do have a lot layout, some examples of what the housing stock would look like on there. And then also, the other concern that we heard loud and clear when we were in the Planning Commission, there's an existing parking problem. The community's concerned about parking. The commercial neighbors in the area are concerned about how potential development could impact their parking. So, we've looked at that and studied that as well. So we have that information for you as well.
Any other questions from council? Do you have any questions from her? Or just bring it back to council? None, then we'll just bring it back to council now. Close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Matt, do you have anything? Bill?
Nope.
Linda?
I have a question. Michelle, maybe you can just remind us or remind me. So when I look at the map, this map actually, so it's page 129 for the council, which is this map that talks about all the available zoning. One would wonder why general commercial didn't go in the site where Cedar Brook.
Should have been flip-flopped.
Yeah. And so, was there a zone change request for that high-density apartment complex that's there? Because as you think about how commercial development develops, obviously they want visibility to, street access, visibility from the road. And so I was wondering if you could recall, or maybe Julia, why that was not, as the mayor sort of implied, it would have made more sense to put residential near residential and then potentially put, commercial services for those residential people who could literally walk instead of, get in their car. So if you could provide some history, I'd appreciate it.
I reviewed the original notice of decision, but I don't recall whether there was a zone change request with that or not.
And I've been here since 2005, and that's been zoned that since 2005.
High density?
High density residential. Okay. I don't recall in the background review. I just don't recall, but I don't believe there was a zone change, but I'm not sure.
Okay. So there was at one point a development that was going to go in there that included an assisted living facility, correct?
Right. In 2008, we received an application for an independent living facility for seniors that would be on one site for that. and that received approval through the Planning Commission. It was a conditional use permit that the property was then acquired by bank-owned, and no development occurred since that, and the land use approval expired
Right.
last December.
And those types of senior facilities are not an approved use in a residential zone, correct?
It would be considered a high-density residential use.
It would be allowed in that?
It would be conditional. The springs
Right.
over there is on high-density
Same
residential zoned land. It is a conditional use.
It would be the same kind of conditional use permit that.
Okay, because
they
we looked
received.
at this similar industry over near the tannery, and we're told that
That was an issue where that property was zoned industrial, and they were trying to change it to residential or commercial. I can't remember honestly, but that was a different issue.
okay.
So I believe they were trying to change it to residential, high-density residential.
Okay. So the reason why this is a two-step process is if the council wants to make a decision tonight or get more information, we're under a time schedule, correct?
That's correct. This first zone change is quasi-judicial, which
Right.
requires the 120-day clock to run, which expires on February 13th unless granted a continuance. So we have to have a final land use decision by the local government by that date.
Do we have any, yeah, oh, I'm sorry, you're yawning, that's why.
I know. It's been a long day. I guess I have more of a question about trying to understand what happened at the Planning Commission level. Why would they not recommend or recommend this without apartments? Do you recall? What was
They
their
just
big
didn't
concern?
want more apartments. There was the parking issue was a lot of it.
The
and-
parking, well, that would have been my guess, is that the parking
Well,
would
they
have been a big
just
issue.
didn't feel it would fit into that location. Was Julie, you'd have more information on that, or actually, I can remember which one were you there.
Well, we both were there, but
Right, so was I.
Michelle's the planner on the project, but I'll chime in and she can add. My recollection was that I think that the market analysis that was done demonstrated a need for the type of product that they're proposing,
Right.
which is a small lot, single-family development. And because of the way the process works, they have to come back in, through the land use process for a PUD. And there was just some concern about, well, what happens if we change the zone? And we've been sort of sold this as, a product that we generally support, but then something happens and someone else wants to come in for an apartment development. So there was just kind of a concern about the timing of how everything is going to work, and the fear that things could change and someone would then come in with an apartment.
But there was even talk about that if they did, you can put that in there, but, I mean, you can say no apartments, but at that look, they were discussing that the whole time, if you can put that in there or not, too.
Right.
Yeah.
And Michelle, do you want to add on to that, or?
Not really. I think that the evidence that they reviewed was really specific to the product that I think that the
Right,
applicant
right.
was interested in promoting. And so they wanted to know, have some knowledge of what they were going to get with that zone change potentially, and with more certainty.
So I hear what you're saying is that economic factors would likely not support, or the applicant did not believe that they would support the apartments, and so they were fine with having that recommendation, follow the application, and that's okay? We can do that?
Yeah, I'll say I don't know that the economic conditions didn't support it. The economic conditions didn't address it. So
okay.
I think that's the difference. And yes, we absolutely can do conditional zone changes. We have in the past. It is awkward. You have to have a map. For instance, we did one several years ago, and we have on our zoning maps, we have, C ordinance, whatever it was, so that you would know to go look at that ordinance. But it's not perfect, and it requires some institutional knowledge to remember to keep that on the maps. And so it's certainly not ideal, but it is done, and it is certainly legal.
So I guess my question is for staff, if just like the previous applicant and it expired that President Henderson just talked about, if we're changing the zone because we want it to develop and it's been sitting vacant as a commercial lot, do we want to make it that restrictive? How do you feel about that recommendation from planning?
Well, staff didn't initially recommend that exception. It was the density would be the same regardless of
Right.
of what type of use. And I think in this circumstance, providing the option, we have the option that's permitted generally in the code is the acceptable resolution to allow all of the varieties of housing type, because you still have the same density.
Right, the density doesn't change. So traffic and parking were the big concerns. Correct, Mayor?
Well, that was part, they didn't even come with an apartment. Nobody even applied. There was no proposal for that, so that was kind of later down the road, somebody brought that up.
But-
Not having.
Well, the traffic was just generated for the residential use with the density amount that could be put on that. So regardless of whether it's apartments or the high-density residential, I think is how the analysis was for that particular site. It was based on number of trips and the number of units that could be on that site potentially was the analysis.
Okay. One more quick question. I couldn't tell from the map that you had up here with the commercial zoning.
Would you like me to put that up?
Down? Yeah. Does it continue down 99 along that corridor? Yeah, the commercial zone
Basically everything.
Yeah. That's
That's the general commercial, and the property south there is what we know as the Elks property, and that's zone low density residential. You can see there's a few smaller properties on the other side of Meineke that are also zoned general commercial, and then it follows some residential, some office commercial, and we have the planned unit development that's zoned office commercial with the condominium live work units, Woodhaven Crossing, I believe, some vacant parcels that are that look like that might be office commercial and high density residential.
It might help also to put up the zoning map. This is the vacant commercial, so
Right.
it makes it look like there's this little island of commercial. But if you look at the overall zoning map throughout the city, you can kind of see a little bit more of a flow of the commercial. Yeah.
So this has been zoned this way at least since 2005, and it has not had. It had a potential applicant with the the adult independent living. See?
Correct.
Okay, I'm done.
Any other comments? You want to make a motion?
I just want to ask one more question. So when the Planning Commission considered traffic impact analysis from changing it from general commercial to residential, the traffic impact actually goes down, given what they've proposed conceptually, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
that's my understanding. And part of that is the way, yeah, I'll let Michelle respond to that. But yes, that's my understanding.
Right, and let's see, the specific numbers. Let's see. I don't know if I have.
While she's looking at that, I'll just the way the transportation planning rule works is you look at the reasonable worst case, and you have to make sure that you're not changing it. So it's not even necessarily what specifically they're proposing, but they look at the reasonable worst case for the existing and the reasonable worst case for the proposed, and that's where the numbers actually go down because the commercial impacts are potentially much greater than a residential impact.
what we did when we got the application in, we reviewed the traffic analysis, and we staff discussed this with the city's traffic engineer, DKS, and we had them write a scope for the applicant that basically took, normally the traffic impact is looked at the PM peak hour. Well, if you've got a development that has a lot of families involved with it, when is the peak hour traffic flow really occurring? Usually in that area, because of the schools locally, it's a morning hour commute time, because in the afternoon, kids get off about 3:30. Then the work traffic flow is later on, which is still less than that peak hour during the afternoon. So what we did is we had them write a scope and check the traffic flows during the morning hours, so that we actually peaked out the maximum flow, not only from the local area, but also for the pass-through traffic coming from people dropping their kids off, to see what the impacts were locally. And it still came up less than what it would be with a commercial.
Okay. And do you have a percentage or a guess? How much less?
It didn't change it by much, but I'd have to go back and I'd have to review. I don't have the numbers right offhand.
Okay.
But I do remember.
But it is
that
less.
It is less. The impacts were not significant enough for us to warrant doing something as far as a traffic impact project.
And during the planning commission, did we have many members from the community come in and have concerns about this turning into residential versus staying general commercial?
There was one person that lived in the neighborhood that was primarily concerned with the issues that we talked about earlier, the parking and the schools, and really took no position, or she said she was neutral, basically, and appreciated that she understood that commercial would likely be, would have more traffic if that were to be the use there.
Okay. Just the one email.
And I read a letter from a resident that was concerned about the parking issue, not the traffic issue, the parking issue. And when they apply for the PUD, they will have to follow all of the codes for the parking issues, to address the parking issues as addressed in the codes for the city of Sherwood.
Right. It will be, and to clarify a little bit, it'll be reviewed first by the Planning Commission. They'll take a look at the application, and they'll review all of the parking issues and concerns specific to this site. And there'll be some minimum parking requirements that they'll absolutely have to meet, especially since we understand the situation here. But there are other alternatives that you could go beyond that, because it's a planned unit development, to see what's happening there. And so then it goes before they make a recommendation to you, and you approve the overlay for the planned unit development in that case, and take another look at it again in the final development plan with the Planning Commission.
I've got another question. So since it will go through that planned unit development, is there a necessity to put a cumbersome attachment of the no apartment on it, or will that be addressed in the PUD process?
It could be if they if that scenario is if the planned unit development doesn't go through, and so if there were to be another applicant or another developer coming in that could have apartments, it wouldn't have necessarily have a planned unit development process.
Okay. Can I also add, though, that if the zone were to change to high-density residential and the developer or owner went away and you didn't have a caveat that said you can't have apartments, and someone came in with apartments, you're still not going to have the parking issues that you have at the Cedarbrook apartments, because we've changed the parking standards, partly in response to the issues at the Cedarbrook, am I saying that right? Cedarbrook apartments, to now require guest parking. So it still may not be ideal, but you're not going to have the same amount of parking issues. So
I have one other question. So I'm a little confused. Our code requires the developer to have a neighborhood meeting, right? And so the developer's having a neighborhood meeting next Thursday. So any information that he gathers, we won't have that information. For example, concerns that we had about, I know this is not a city function. This is a function of the developer, right? So obviously they'll have community members who will come out, because some of them have already called me, and they're concerned, and they're looking forward to going to the meeting. But any data or concerns that they have may or may not have a bearing on our decision, but that could change the nature of how you've advertised the neighborhood meeting, could it not?
So with this application was for the zone change and the text amendment.
Right.
And they held a meeting earlier this fall about that particular issue, not necessarily the planned unit development.
Okay.
They're going ahead with their planned unit development process, and with that process, before an application comes into us, we ask that you hold a neighborhood meeting to get input so you can maybe change your plan a little bit before you submit a formal application to the city. So that they're moving ahead with their planned unit development process ahead of the gate a little bit in terms of this process. So they've already had a neighborhood meeting concerning the zone change and the text amendment. And that information is in your packet as well, and the response, and they can speak to that, what issues were brought up at that particular meeting this fall.
Right. And that has more to do with the second ordinance that we're considering tonight, which is the text amendment regarding the PUD.
Well, the zone change was affecting the 1,000-foot property.
Notification.
Notification.
Right.
And then also the text amendment would be citywide. It would be any property.
Right.
It's available to that meets a certain size limitation in the limitations. And
Right.
there was no specific neighborhood meeting concerning a legislative action.
Right.
But the neighborhood meeting that they are doing next week, so they're doing these two actions to basically allow them to come in and submit a land use application for what they really want to do, which is what the neighborhood meeting is for next week. Is okay. Now we're sort of hoping that we get through the council process, and we're wanting to submit something soon, so we want to have a neighborhood meeting. And to me, that's a good indication that they probably will not walk away from the property. So.
So I'm
Go ahead.
hearing that the density and the traffic would be similar with the product that the applicant had presented at Planning Commission as compared to the apartments.
Similar. I believe so. It's the similar amount of number of trips would
Yeah.
be the same.
And I'm also
not-
hearing a little
does
bit
it
of
have a
interest
different-
amongst council, perhaps not to include that restriction on the property for a variety of reasons. Do we have a copy of the ordinance prepared for tonight that doesn't include that restriction? Or
So
are we
the
gonna have to
ordinance that
amend
you
it?
have before you refers to the findings of the Planning Commission recommendations. So in the language that in Exhibit 1 includes, the first paragraph kind of talks about what happened at the Planning Commission and their recommendation. So if you were to strike that provision from the Planning Commission Exhibit 1, that would clarify the issue. So, yeah, I'm going to
Read that out loud, Michelle.
So it says, after considering the staff report, applicant testimony, and the public comments, the commission recommended approval of the zone change as proposed, and then would likely strike, but with the limitation that the property could not be developed as multi-family residential, a use traditionally permitted in the high-density residential zone.
So you want that struck from that?
It's not written in the ordinance, though, is it?
It's not in the ordinance, it's just referred to as a finding in the Planning Commission recommendation.
But I think that the concern is that if this PUD doesn't come through, then, their recommendation is that they did not feel that an apartment complex was a use that they felt attractive. And what they're proposing is not that, but of course, as Julia said, if we strike it and for some unforeseen reason their PUD doesn't go through, it opens us up for an apartment complex, which is what they are recommending they don't want. So I don't know how other people feel about that.
Well, an apartment complex is an approved use in the high density.
How many?
Brad-
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
The voice behind me recommended that I say in the general commercial zone, also apartments are a permitted
Yeah,
use
that's true.
as secondary.
Oh. So what I heard you say earlier about the Planning Commission's concern about apartments is it came along later. Is that right?
Through the course of the deliberations and the discussion.
deliberations. Did it come from the commissioners then discussing with themselves? I'm just trying to understand. I wish I'd been there. Do you remember? What because I'm leaning towards striking that because I look at Sunfield Lakes and the development up there beside it, and it would not be that. Sunfield Lakes has got to be more than 5 acres, and this is what we're really talking about.
Right.
About that amount of property together.
About 2.75
for this section, but Cedar Brook
Oh,
is already,
including that, I think is a little over. What do they have? 8 acres.
Oh,
It's considerably larger.
I just am looking at an area of community that I have a lot of friends in, and it's really nice. I like it. Walk there all the time, run there all the time. So I guess I'm trying to understand the concern.
Well, yeah, and as it's zoned today, you can put apartments there anyway.
Anyway.
So
Right.
I don't see the value in us jumping through some hoops to
Yeah,
restrict the
consolidate
land
anyway,
use when
yeah.
you can already do it today. They're not asking to put apartments in clearly, but why have staff go through jumping through the hoops and mess around with it? Just approve the zone change, clean, and move on.
Right, and I'm sorry, Councilor Folsom, I didn't have my mic on, but what I had said, if it didn't come in, to Councilor Langer was that
Yeah.
the zoning, the way that it is right now, accepts the apartment.
Right.
So, I don't know if planning talked about that, but
No.
maybe they didn't
No.
have that information piece or weren't thinking about that information piece. And so since it's already allowed in the zoning that it's in, I think to strike it makes sense because we're not changing the way that it's already coded.
It's already an approved use.
It's already approved.
So if I make a motion to read, caption, and adopt this ordinance, do you want me to, in my motion, to strike the condition or limitation that the property not be developed as multifamily residential, as listed in the staff report?
I think
That sounds-
so, yeah.
Is that what you want
That
me to
sounds
do?
good.
Okay. May I?
Yes, and I would, before you do that, I would just
Okay.
add and confirm that even though we've posted the ordinance with that, under your charter, we've read the change aloud, and that permits us to make this change this evening.
Okay. So I move we read, caption, and adopt ordinance 2014-001, striking the condition listed in the third paragraph of the staff report that limits that the property could not be developed as a multifamily residential development. And so the ordinance is amending the comprehensive plan and zoning map to redesignate a parcel from general commercial to high-density residential. That is my motion.
Second.
Ordinance 2014-001, amending the comprehensive plan and zoning map to redesignate a parcel from general commercial to high-density residential. Counselor Clark?
Aye.
Counselor Langer?
Aye.
Counselor Butterfield?
Aye.
Counselor Folsom?
Aye.
Counselor Grant is absent. Council President Henderson?
Aye.
Mayor Middleton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
But don't go anywhere.
I'm glued to my seat.
Harder part. You need to read again?
Does anybody need a break? No, go ahead. She's got to read a new one. That's-
Mayor and council, the next item is legislative item, so the public hearing statement isn't really necessary, but you should gather public comment.
You want to read? I read the ordinance title anyway.
Yes, please.
Ordinance 2014-002, amending section 16.40 of the Zoning and Community Development Code relating to planned development units. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. So, to reiterate, we're here to talk about the planned unit development changes that are proposed by the applicant. Planned unit development standards generally require 5,000 square foot minimum lot sizes for single-family homes in all zones. The applicant is requesting that this provision be removed from the planned unit development standards, or PUD, we like to call it PUD. So to step back a little bit, what exactly is a planned unit development, or PUD? They're considered on 5-acre parcels that have some challenges to development compared to other available properties. They allow the applicant to apply flexible design standards that result in greater public benefit than a strict code enforcement of certain provisions. They provide an innovative plan for development, a variety of housing types. There needs to be areas of open space that are generally greater than what would be required in a standard subdivision of 15% for planned unit developments. The underlying zoning applies, and as well as the density applies to the standards as well. And it's reviewed and approved by both the Planning Commission and the City Council for approval. Some examples of planned unit developments currently in our community. This big one is really Woodhaven. We have Arbor Terrace, Miller's Landing, Arbor Lane, and Sherwood View Estates are all examples of planned unit developments within our community. Again, I wanted to show you the areas of vacant residential land that this could apply to in the future. We have the Brookman area to the south and also the properties within the city boundary. Remind you a little bit about the properties east of Murdoch. Could also come in for planned unit development application, but we've put some standards in place that limit that development, as well as the density within the area would still apply. Criteria for the text amendment is basically the same. It takes a look at our transportation planning rule consistency and some of our comprehensive plan policies, identified especially residential land use and availability of variety of housing type, which is important in the plan. So here's the proposal, the planned unit development. For planned unit developments only, remove the minimum lot size and add the language that you see here, that they're not subject to the minimum lot size, but the applicant must demonstrate the proposal meets the purpose and intent of the zoning and development code as well as the comprehensive plan. So there's those restrictions in place for that. So the Planning Commission recommended denial of this application of the text amendment. They discussed that they thought that this 5,000 lot minimum standard should be a policy decision made by the City Council. And if the City Council were to consider approval of the text amendment, they recommended considering a sunset provision, like Ordinance 2004-007, which is Exhibit 1H in your application materials. They during deliberations, they talked about Arbor Terrace, and this is what they applied for that development that you might be familiar with that's over by the Target area. They thought that that was a good use of the provision for reducing the minimum lot size, and that it was a product that was reviewed by the Planning Commission and the City Council, and it looked over time that it stood the test of time, really, that it's a good development in the community. So before you this evening, you have the proposed ordinance. I've included a sunset provision that the Planning Commission talked about, and then you have the same exhibits before you that were in the earlier ordinance with the Planning Commission recommendation as well as the attached exhibits. And I'd ask that you hold a public hearing on this particular ordinance.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Oh, we have one coming up.
Start raising your hand. I want you to
Go ahead.
Good evening, Council. My name is Mike Serbone. I'm a land use planner with Cardno, and I'm here this evening now to talk to you about the proposed planned unit development text amendment. As I alluded to earlier, the zone change is something that can be measured. We can put a very good case in front of you. The text amendment is something that's much more of a value judgment. This is, there is no right or wrong answer in this instance. What we did is we looked at the opportunity to provide for some different housing opportunities than what you currently have in your community right now. It's something Mr. Tiemann, Andy Tiemann, is with me, and he's the contract purchaser and ultimately would be the person responsible for developing the property. And he's going to show you some examples of, how the site can be laid out, consistent with what we've talked about so far, and then show you some examples of the product as well so you can get an idea of what the potential is for your community. I want to start off by saying I practice what I preach. So I live in a house that's 15 feet wide. My lot is 25 feet by 100. So I live on a 2,500 square foot lot. I describe it sometimes as a single wide double stacked. And essentially what it is, it's 1,600 square feet. I have 3 bedrooms. I have 2.5 baths. I have a living room. I have a dining room. It's comfortable. It's perfect for me and my girlfriend, my dog, and my cat. My entire front yard is edible, so it's all fruits, vegetables, raised beds. The backyard is large enough for my dog, and I live within close proximity to a park where I can go take the dog to run and get some open space. So you have somebody before you who understands what a small lot looks like and how that can be developed and how it works. Currently, the way that your zoning code is set up, it effectively precludes the ability to do that in your community. So if I'm a first-time home buyer or somebody looking to downsize in your community, my options really are single-family dwellings, if I want to own, single-family dwellings on a 5,000 square foot lot, or a condominium. And for some people, that's just not really a very good option, or a townhome as well would be the other option, attached product. So one of the things we looked at was how could we reach our goal? And we're not going to lie to you, we have a goal in mind that we want to try and get to. So some of the things we did look at is we looked at, well, we could reduce the minimum lot size in the actual base zones. Well, that didn't make sense because this is probably not something that you want throughout the community. We wanted to give you, as the decision makers for the community, the most control over the decision as it happens. And the planned unit development seemed like a very good vehicle. It limits it to the application of lots that are 5 acres or larger. Typically, it limits it to properties that have natural resource issues or weird configurations. And what we proposed to do with the actual text amendment by removing the lot size was to put as much decision-making authority in your hands as we could. And that's why we tied it back to the intent of the zoning code. So the actual base zone, so you'd have to go and show findings on how the proposed development is consistent with the intent of that base zone. And then we actually proposed for it to be consistent with your comprehensive plan as well. As you guys know, a comprehensive plan is your goals and policies. It's a very broad policy document, and so it gives you a lot of latitude in interpreting what that document means and how that applies to each development that comes before you. In this instance, Michelle gave a good example of what's going to happen. If you approve this text amendment tonight, what we intend to do is submit a planned unit development. That planned unit development would go before staff. They'd review that application, make sure it had all the basic components that are required. Staff would interact with the applicant, maybe encourage some revisions to the plan. And then what would happen is there would be a public hearing before the Planning Commission. There'd be notice mailed out to adjacent property owners. Those property owners could provide testimony in a written format, or those neighbors could actually come and participate at the hearing. I don't think we got the full 30 minutes. Is it all right if I keep on talking?
That was. I'm sorry, Julie, is 30 minutes louder? This is a legislative item, 4-minute comment?
It's really actually up to you. Generally, because it's an applicant, at the Planning Commission level for legislative amendments, they let the applicant do the 30 minutes, and then just like a quasi-judicial. But it's not quasi-judicial, so it is up to council.
What would you like?
I think we ought to be consistent with the planning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll go ahead. Just keep going.
Thank you. So that application would be posted. There'd be an opportunity for input. So community members could articulate their concerns in a written format. They could come in person to the hearing. They can go through the comprehensive plan. They can look at specific policies that they feel support their position. And that can then be brought to the actual decision makers, and used decision makers can weigh the different policies in the comprehensive plan and, apply a significant amount of discretion to the review of the land use application. It's very different than what you would see in a typical staff level decision where you have clear and objective policies where you meet. It really is going to be put in the Planning Commission's hands to make a formal recommendation to you guys to make sure that you're comfortable with it. So the concerns that we've heard regarding parking, potential aesthetics of the buildings, the layouts of the buildings, and any deviations that may be requested for, say, a setback or a lot coverage or something to that effect, they're going to have to go through and justify why they think that's appropriate and how their design mitigates that. I understood the concerns that we heard at the Planning Commission. They were concerned about approving this without really understanding how it could impact the community and how it could apply to other properties in the community. And I'm here to tell you honestly, I think it gives you a lot more control over what actually occurs in your community. But that's up to you and your staff to discuss. I'm going to let Andy go ahead. Andy Tiemann from D.R. Horton. They're the contract purchaser for the site. They are the nation's #1 home builder, and they have done product in your area, and they're very excited about developing this site. I'm going to let Andy talk a little bit about the site plan he's pulled together and the product that he's got out there.
Good evening. My name is Andy Tiemann. I'm a project manager for D.R. Horton. We are under contract to purchase this property, hopefully with these approvals tonight. And so we looked at this property and wanted to build single-family detached and single-family attached. And directly to the east are apartments. And to the west of our site are single-family detached. So we wanted to kind of have a transition from the multifamily apartment development and have an attached, single-family attached along the apartments, and as we go further to the west, have a single-family detached housing. And before you is an example of a concept plan we would like to propose. We are going to have a neighborhood meeting on Thursday to discuss this concept plan. And if the text amendment gets approved tonight, we would like to move forward with the application for this PUD. So we looked at this site. This is our concept plan we would like to build. When we first originally looked at it, with the restriction of having a 5,000 square foot lot, we really struggled being able to build a fee simple single family home because of that restriction. And we wanted to kind of get a baseline of what can be done on this site with HDR with no 5,000 square foot amendment. And this is a plan that we came up with. It's condominiums. We are a builder. We buy property, develop it, build homes, and sell it to homeowners. We don't rent. It's fee simple. Condominiums we can do. We don't like to do them, but this is an example of a project that could happen with HDR. We don't want to do that, but this will meet your code. What we would like to do is similar to this site plan. It would be a combination of front-loaded single-family attached, alley-loaded single-family attached, and detached single-family. On this site plan, we showed how we meet parking requirements, and we'll go into much more detail with staff and with our submittal with a PUD. This is a concept plan. We've already met with staff a couple times. We're making good progress, and this is becoming more feasible on developing this site with this concept plan. So, for an example, I have some renderings and some photographs of homes we would like to build. This is a single-family detached home. The garage is on the backside of this home, so it would be accessed through an alley. But the public street would have a front door, would be this elevation here. So this would be a rendering of a home we would build. Another rendering. Another rendering. And another architectural style. And this is an actual photo of alley-loaded home that we have built. We built this home in Hillsborough, and we built this home in Beaverton and Happy Valley. Here's another picture of a home that we actually built.
Pictures.
So that's a single-family detached. Here is a front-loaded townhome. This is a rendering where the garages are accessed from the front. It's a single-car garage. This is an actual photo on a nice gray day in winter. But it's this was built in Happy Valley. It's front-loaded. Square footage of these attached homes are 1,400 to 1,500 square feet with about 3 bedrooms. Here is a rendering for an alley-loaded townhome where the garage would be on the rear, and this would be your street scene from the front. And this is an actual photograph. We built this. We're under construction right now in Vancouver, Washington, with this plan, with this building. So with that, goes back to our site plan. The front loaded would be north is going to the right, but on the east border would be the single family attached front loaded, along with on the south side along Meineke. In the island in the center would be the alley loaded attached homes, and then along Cedar Brook Way would be your single family detached homes with a nice street scene. That particular home style provide on-street parking. So if you look at this plan, you can see some parked cars. You can see parked cars all along Cedar Brook. Having the alley-loaded home provides parking on the street because you don't have conflicts with driveways. On the public road that runs north through south, it's parking on one side. The parking on the east side would be restricted because of all the driveway conflicts. So we decided to have all the parking on the west side of that road. And all of these homes would have either a 2-car garage or a 1-car garage plus a driveway. So when you add up all the number of parking spots on this particular plan, it adds up to 265 available parking spaces. We're proposing 66 homes, so that's about a little bit over 4 parking spaces per home. All of these homes would range from 1,300 to 1,500 square feet. They're all 3-bedroom homes, and they're all going to be fee simple home ownership. And we're excited. We'd like to move forward as quickly as possible. We'd like to do the development this summer and be able to build homes this fall. And so I personally think that the text amendment should be approved. It'll allow flexibility. And then just long-term, any property with HDR, it would just give us flexibility. We're currently building a subdivision in your community. We want to build this. We're going to be building future developments. Allowing that text amendment is not going to change anything because you still have to go through a PUD to get variation. It's just it'll reduce the number of steps that development would have to go through. For instance, if this text amendment was just specific to this property and we found another medium density or high density and want to do a typical, same development pattern as this, we would have to go back again and go through another text amendment, wait for that to get approved, and then submit a development application. So I recommend that you approve the proposed language for the text amendment and remove that cap of 5,000 square feet. So with that is my presentation and what we would like to build. This could change. We're going to have a neighborhood meeting. We're going to meet with staff. Things will change a little bit, but by the time we submit an application, we should have this all figured out and be able to move forward.
Thanks, Andy. I just wanted to add one last thing because it was a concern that was raised concerning neighborhood outreach. We did have a neighborhood meeting we had over at the elementary school right up the road from the site. And we did have, my recollection is we had about 5 people who attended. There were 2 people there that really liked the text amendment proposed. They were folks that do residential development in your community, and they came specifically to the meeting to learn more about that. The other 2 people, one was a group of 2 and one was a single woman who came, they liked the proposal. We didn't have any negative comments. It was about one of the smoothest neighborhood meetings I've had in the last 3 years.
I forgot to mention that this development that we're looking at here, the lot area, it will be in the range from 1,500 to 2,500 square feet on the lot area.
Say that again.
1,500 to 2,500 would be your lot sizes. 1,500 would be more of your interior unit attached, and your detached would be more in the range of 2,500 square feet.
So in your conceptual plan here, you have a requirement to have so much open space, correct?
That is correct. We have, it might be hard to see, but there are some open space areas scattered throughout this development. When we do submit a PUD, we will look at adding some amenities to those open spaces, and we'll have that detail when we submit a PUD. But this particular development plan has 15% open space.
Right. And so when you say amenities, you mean like playground equipment or park benches or things like that?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
And could you reiterate your parking ratio again? 66, what I heard was, oh, sorry, I wrote it down.
4 vehicles per resident.
66 parking spaces with, 66 homes, 265 parking spaces?
Yeah,
That
so
includes, obviously, street parking on Cedar Brook Way.
That includes street, driveways, and garages. So on the street, I counted 77, based on this plan, there were 77 on-street parking. I calculated 94 parking spaces available in driveways, and then 94 available parking spaces in garages.
And that's a 4.01515.
A little over our standard, isn't it?
Yeah, one would argue that, garages might not utilize 2 full. People put stuff in there, and you might only get 1 car in there. So even if you lose 1 car, we're still at 3, which is still a pretty good ratio. I have a garage, and I park my car in it, and we'll have CC&Rs, and you could restrict it in the CC&Rs, but sometimes it's difficult to enforce because you got to catch them, and kind of gets uncomfortable in the HOA situation. But so yeah, we've looked into the parking issue. We're hoping that this would help with the parking out in the current area.
So some of my constituents who contacted me who live on Handley already have parking problems from the apartments that are, directly east of your proposed development. And one thing that they brought to my attention was, would the city be willing to, as we've done in other neighborhoods, most recently around the high school, was to put in a permitted parking program. So obviously the people who live in the apartments and or your develop would not be able to park on Handley without a permit. So I'm also wondering, and I know we're a little ahead of ourselves, but those 77 spaces that you say are on the road, will probably more than half of those will be taken up by people who live in the apartments. Because those are the people who are, of course, are parking in the roundabout that's unfinished over on the west side and then up Handley, also in front of some of the businesses that are directly south of you. So,
Assuming that's not made all no parking too, because a lot of one side are parking on the other.
yeah, are we sure that are you confident that your street width would allow parking on both sides?
Along Cedar Brook, I believe the street section, we're essentially matching the existing road section that's there today, and we're extending that through. I believe the road, it's kind of hard to see on that
Well,
street
they
section.
used to have double wide, they used to have parking on both sides. They only have it on the south side right now. But
Yeah, I believe because there's single-family
Yeah.
homes being built.
Yeah.
That for construction access, parking was restricted there because of construction, but it was allowed parking on both sides. So
Yes.
this road is wide enough to provide parking on both sides.
Okay. So in the unit, would you have permitted parking or not? Or assigned parking? I'm not exactly sure if I'm saying that the right way. So
No, this would be fee simple. Every homeowner, they would own their lot and their
driveway,
home,
obviously, yeah.
and they would have their driveway and their garages to park. And then the on-street parking would be visiting, or they could park their car on the street as well, but it's probably most likely visiting parking at that point. So yeah, I mean, when we submit our PUD application, we'll have to dig into the parking a little bit more. It would be a shame for parking for these homeowners to be taken from the apartment that didn't meet the requirement or had a different
Right.
requirement at the time. So we're more than happy to set up a parking district and do permits for these homeowners so they at least have one visitor parking and not have that struggle. I'm not sure how that would work out. We'll work out those details and come back with a PUD with hopefully a solution for that.
In your rendering, I see, so the loaded alleys, there's no parking.
So the interior block, the island block, the parking would be on the driveways and in the garages.
Right, so that's what I mean. There's no parking on that street. It's
Correct.
that's the
That-
loaded alley that is just for in and out.
Correct. That'd be just a travel alley. No parking allowed. It'd be 20 feet wide to meet the fire clearance requirements. But we wanted to, because of the constraints, this property, the shape of the property is constrained. And we were really struggling trying to get a public road and meeting those standards. So we ended up doing a public road north and south with parking on one side, and then doing a smaller alley through to create that island block. But yeah, we did not want to allow parking in that.
And the driveway spacing would preclude it because the driveways won't be so close.
or you wouldn't be able to get fire EMS in there.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Maybe staff needs to answer this, but how does the street width compare to Woodhaven street width?
I don't know what's proposed, and I guess that all of those details will come, and through the PUD process, you certainly could, if they're proposing something that's unacceptable, you could require something larger if there's a concern. So we can, I don't know if you can answer that, but I don't know what your proposed street width is, and so I can't answer that.
The road that is running north and south is 28 feet wide. That will allow parking on one side and will allow 20 foot of clearance for access for two-way traffic and for fire. And the reason why we made it 28 feet is because the front-loaded townhomes that we're proposing on the east side of that road has a lot of driveways, and you can't physically park a car because of the driveway conflicts. So that's why we narrowed that street section down to 28 feet wide because of the shape of the property, and we were really constrained. So that's why we made that road 28 feet wide. That internal alley will be 20 feet wide. And then Cedar Brook and Meineke would continue the same street width on the perimeter. We would continue that street width to be the same.
My concern is that we have parking on both sides of the road. Do we actually have two-way traffic flow through that street? Unlike some of the neighborhoods now where we have, parking on both sides and you can only get one-way traffic.
Yeah, we would restrict parking on the east side, so it would be just parking on one side. And the driveways would help restrict that, and plus we'll have signage and painted curbs to restrict parking on the east side of that road.
So there'd be two 10-foot travel lanes, one in each direction, and an 8-foot parking area.
Okay.
I think now what we're really trying to decide on is if we want to go to the smaller size lots. They'll bring that back to us, but this is, we have to make a decision on that. And I've got some people that want to talk about that also. So good. Gene Stewart, would you like to comment?
Eugene Stewart, just basically it seems possibly like a good concept, but what I'm concerned with is whether or not you have fulfilled your citizen involvement. And I would refer you to the Oregon statewide planning goals and guidelines, Goal 1, citizen involvement under OAR 660-015-40, turn 1. If you look at page 3, paragraph 6, under revision, it states the general public, through the local citizen involvement programs, should have the opportunity to review and make recommendations on proposed changes in comprehensive land use plans prior to the public hearing process. I repeat, prior to the public hearing process, to formally consider the proposed changes. This has not been done. Your planning commission is not that body because they are a formal body that is in that. And I think at this time the council needs to look at what citizen involvement, Goal 1, really is and see if the city meets it or not. And if they do, if the attorney has an opinion, I'd like to see a written opinion made public. Thank you.
I can just make a general statement in response to Mr. Stewart's comments that he's correct that the statewide goals envision, and particularly Goal 1, envision citizen involvement. However, the city has an acknowledged comprehensive plan that includes policies that address Goal 1. That plan has been acknowledged by the Land Conservation and Development Commission, and therefore the goals don't apply directly. The text amendment findings that the staff has presented are findings of consistency with the comprehensive plan. So there's a hierarchy that we are required to meet. The policy question, of council is of whether we have adequate citizen involvement is a very different question and not something that should be addressed here. Does that answer your question? The question.
Jennifer Harris.
Say my name and all that. Jennifer Harris, 21484 Southwest Rolich Avenue. Thank you for being here tonight. And my background is in HR and development, and my schooling is in HR, so I'm kind of talking about something I don't really understand completely, and it may belong in the PUD issues next time. But one of my concerns about this particular text change, I guess, is that what I've noticed in the last year and a half or 2 years coming to these meetings and just listening is that the rule makers and changers in Sherwood tend to do what the rules and laws and things allow, regardless of how they feel about it. So you get a lot of, we might not like it, but the law says we can do it or we need to do it. And so by changing this particular, I don't know if it's a rule or text, I don't understand that part of it, but while might fit this particular development C a year and a half later, it doesn't fit, but you approve it simply because it's written there and it says we kind of do, and so let's just approve it. What else can we do? And so I know that they had made some conversation, talked about, again, I'm not using the correct terms, but having some sort of ability to allow it for this development without actually changing the text so that it doesn't have, and this group likes this word, unintended consequences in the future. So I don't know if that's an option for this particular development. I happen to be one of the homeowners in that area who did come to the Planning Commission meeting, and while the apartment complex issue is an issue, I think that the development I saw up there with condos is not much different than apartments. So I'd prefer to see something a little more single-family friendly. I think that while I appreciate the speaker's home, single-wide, stackable home, I think that that's not necessarily the type. I don't think we have an influx of people coming single that want to live in Sherwood. I think we have young families. I think we have families looking to move to Sherwood for a better life, to give their kids more, to have more open space. And so I don't know how the 500,000 square feet lot fits into all of that. And Councilor Henderson actually spoke to many of my concerns. She had, I think, 77 street parking spaces are going to be filled up with 77 apartment complex visitors and dwellers. And while a single load may have a garage, it's still generally a single driveway. And most of these homeowners are probably going to be two-parent, either working or one working, one not. And so you just imagine the cars, okay, I got to go to the store, you pull out, I pull in. So a single driveway with a garage may technically be 2 or 3 parking spots. Chances are it's only going to be 1 or 2 because they're going to want to park on the street so that their husband can get out in the morning, and they're going to park on the street so they can get out and take the kids and come back. So I am fine with the zone change. I didn't say much about that because I understand the need for that, but I just don't completely understand how the 5,000 square feet thing works. So take my opinion for what it is, but I'm just concerned. Parking is an issue there, and I think that anyone who's driven over there on a Saturday or Friday can see that. So thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come up for a rebuttal, or do you just want to take questions?
Thank you again, Council. Great. I did just want to point out that the comprehensive plan is acknowledged. The code is then articulated from the comprehensive plan. The code required us to host a neighborhood meeting. We did have a neighborhood meeting. We did discuss the text amendment. We did discuss the zone change. We did show different product types that could occur on the site. And we answered all the questions from the folks who attended. Once we submit our application, it was deemed complete. The city mailed notice, which provided an opportunity for community members to provide written comments into the record for both the hearings this evening. Then there was a hearing before the Planning Commission where community members could come down and provide testimony, and there's a hearing this evening as well. That's a lot of opportunity for public involvement in the process. Exceeds other communities. Ms. Harris, I understand her concerns. To put it simply, I think a pretty simple way to think about what's before you this evening right now is if we developed without the text amendment, then let's say there's 30 pages of code that would apply to the site. And these are, round numbers. If you adopt the text amendment, there's hundreds of pages that could potentially apply to the development in the form of your comprehensive plan, your TSP, and any other ancillary documents you have that are part of your comprehensive plan. So I think that provides you a lot more oversight. In response to some of the concerns about the size of the lot, one of the only ways that we have in the state of Oregon to allow, reduce the barrier to home development is through controlling the size of the house and the size of the lot. We don't have the ability to do what's called inclusionary zoning and require certain price points in Oregon. We're one of the few states that do not. And so one of the few ways that you have the ability to allow homeownership to people in your community or for people to downsize if they fall on hard times is going to be controlling the size of the lot, or in some instances controlling the size of the home, but you do not do that in your current text. Parking, we've heard that. We understand it. If you saw the plan that we proposed to the Planning Commission, the revisions that Mr. Tiemann made came back to try and solve those problems and identify parking opportunities. We know that that's going to be a big deal moving forward, and that's something we're prepared to address with you guys should you approve the amendment this evening. With that, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so if there's any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Council questions?
Do you have any? So I have a question for staff. So the last time that I remember doing a text amendment with a sunset provision was for the Arbitraris development, right? And that was a year. Sunset was a year.
That's my understanding. That was actually before my time. But yes, that's my understanding is that was for a year.
So were there issues that came up that we didn't anticipate by having a sunset provision for a year that anybody can remember?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, the issues that could come up, I guess, if I think I understand what you're asking, is did anybody else come in? Were there issues with that development? And no, nobody came in except for that developer. Certainly someone could, if you had this open and it was sunsetted for a year, you could have another development that came through the PUD process and was able to demonstrate that smaller lot sizes and a PUD was a good trade-off for the benefit that they were providing to the community. It's possible. That did not happen with the Arbitraris. And I'm not aware of any issues through the development of the Arbitraris subdivision other than there were, and this is sort of a vague, I wasn't directly involved, but I know there were some questions. They had some very strict design standards and design criteria through that PUD process to have 3 different types of materials, and there were some questions and issues through that process, but nothing that I'm aware of regarding the lot size itself.
Okay.
I was just sitting here playing with my calculator. So if 77 of the parking spaces are taken up by the apartments, that still leaves 188, which is 2.85 parking spaces per unit. So does that, even at that, do we still meet the parking requirements per code?
Yes.
Code is 1.8.
So it sounds to me like even there's a parking problem with the apartments, but this development is actually a solution. So I'm not sure why they're getting criticized for a parking problem. The math pencils out that they're actually a solution to what we have today. They should be getting credit for that.
Well, I think we're mixing up 2 topics.
That's right.
And I think we're getting off topic of what we're really talking about.
Yep.
I think we're going to be talking about, and not that your notations and comments are not valid, but we're going to be talking about the PUD and the parking. I think what we need to talk about is the text amendment. On the text amendment, I actually do have a question for Julia. So the way that the ordinance is currently before us, the way that it is written, it does not have a sunset. And it does? Okay, so see, I missed it. That's why I'm asking. So it's got the year. Is that 1 year? Okay. So it would and we wouldn't be doing it for this development. It would be a text amendment for the entire city of Sherwood for a year.
Yes, and as Michelle mentioned, that was based on the Planning Commission's original recommendation was denial because they were concerned, but they did discuss being open to the possibility. So certainly the council could take the Planning Commission's recommendation and deny it, or approve it with a sunset, or approve it without a sunset. Those are kind of the options that that are immediately before you.
I have a couple questions. So I appreciate the comments from everybody. And I really appreciate Ms. Harris, she did a great job of trying to take something that is hard for most of us conceptually and understanding. And I've had the advantage of 5 years on council and a lot of staff time to help me. So I appreciate that she really caught the message. And I think what I've been hearing through the discussion is our community really ready to say unilaterally that we want lot smaller, sizes smaller than 5,000? And I think what I'm hearing from Planning Commission and from others is not really. But I also heard something tonight that I hadn't really comprehended yesterday when I had some time with staff, was that potentially when Michelle had the text amendment up there, it looks to me as if it is a lot more subjective than it is currently. Is that accurate? It's more subjective.
More subjective than what? I guess,
well, than dictating what you can do. you
Yeah.
know, like I think that's what Jennifer Harris was saying is, you know, do we want to get in that situation where in the future we have to do something because we don't? Well, in the text amendment, when it has that subjectivity, we can say, no, we don't desire to do that.
Yeah, and sort of responding to her comments about, and she's right, a lot of times at the Planning Commission's level especially, you've got to meet these clear and objective standards, and if
Right.
you meet them, you've got to approve them regardless of how you feel. The PUD is a process where you're basically saying, we're willing to give a little bit on the flexibility because we're getting a better product. But it's
Right.
discretionary in terms of what makes it a better product, and the Planning Commission and ultimately the council have the ability to decide whether or not what they're presenting is really better enough for you to be willing to grant that acceptance. And so it really gives you a lot of flexibility, but also the ability to control what that product looks like, which is why on the Arbor Terrace, you know, through that process, they were required to provide a lot of different building materials and open space and landscaping that you wouldn't get through a traditional subdivision or even a traditional multifamily development process.
Mm-hmm. And that was with changing it to having a sunset provision.
Right.
They were able to get that because it was a trade-off.
Well, they were able to get the smaller lot sizes, which allowed that product to be built there, which
Right.
allowed them to go through the PUD process.
I also really appreciated seeing the pictures in real life. That was very meaningful. So I appreciated that a lot. I'm just trying, and I appreciated Mr. Stewart's concern as well. So, because I think what he was saying is changing a text amendment in the code needs more input than just an application to the Planning Commission. I think that's what I was hearing him say. And I think that I appreciated Pam's response to that. So I think we're clear. There has been a lot of citizen involvement, but what I've also heard from the applicant is we've offered the citizen involvement, but there hasn't been more than 5 people at your particular meetings or whatever. Is that right? Did I hear all of that right? Did I miss any of the steps?
Yes, you heard all of that right. And I'll just add, the notice here in Sherwood is 1,000 feet from the property, which is the largest of any city that I'm aware of in Oregon.
And I think I heard that from the applicant as well, is that you do this a lot, and what you said is there's a lot of opportunities for citizen involvement. But it's a choice whether people come, as we've seen. But this text amendment, it's something I've been wrestling with, but I'm trying to understand it better. I appreciate everybody's comments, so those are my questions.
Okay, I just have a few comments. One is, I'm not in favor at all of reducing the 5,000 feet. We've got plenty of areas around here that we've got smaller lots that have been built out. And you talk about the driveways. Go down some of the areas that have the driveways that back up onto the street, and people block the sidewalks. They're virtually impossible to walk down because they back their cars in 2 at a time, or they load the garage up with garbage, and so they really have, in effect, one spot, and they park behind each other. I'm more of a single-family, nice 5,000 square foot lots. I mean, even that's small compared to a lot of places. I just don't think we need any more where we're pinching ourselves in. We've got a lot of areas right now that I think that we've already developed the smaller lots for the public, and I think a nice 5,000 square foot lot with a nice house would sell very easily. That's just my feeling.
Could I ask a question? So, but regards to changing this particular area to the zone change that we just did, then how do you see that developing if we don't?
5,000 square foot lots.
But we just zoned it as high density.
Right, you'd have to go back to the apartment section then.
One of the things that really struck me as I considered this is the success of the Arbor Terrace PUD, because I remember there was a lot of concern about that at the time. But I think there was actually a point in time where they sold out their phase 2 in 2 days, because for Sherwood, that is affordable housing. And I think that that's what they were talking. It was. It became not very affordable because, and I also, having gone through the process of purchasing properties in other areas that were high density residential in other states and communities, and also having a friend who lives in a high density residential in Portland, the sidewalk problem you just described is very real. And I can't park between the driveways when I go to tend the baby because it's a problem. So I always have to find, yeah. But I think that there's a lot of value. I really appreciate what has developed over there and has allowed that area of our community to develop and be used. So I don't know, just opinion.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of order. Are you finished with public testimony? Should we close the public hearing? I think you're I think you just moved right into deliberation.
Thank you.
Oh, they're just answering questions.
You done, Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, hearing what's going on here tonight, if I went out tomorrow, bought me some land, and I wanted to do what they're doing, how long would it take me to get through the process? Could I do it in a year?
Yes, I think that you could, but as Michelle showed you earlier, there aren't a lot of vacant pieces of land in the city of Sherwood. You also are going to be limited by the density. So you could do lots smaller than 5,000 square feet, but if you are in low density residential, you're also going to have, your overall density isn't going to change. So you're not going to, you might have a cluster of really small lots, but then you're going to have a lot of open space around it. You know, and you obviously would have to weigh the benefits. But to go through the planned unit development process, it is feasible. I don't think it's super likely, but it's.
Yeah, I might add that they only actually have to make an application for a
Right.
planned unit development within the year period. They would be vested after that
Oh,
date.
so there's no way we could use that to prohibit someone if we had the sunset in 6 months versus a year?
Well, it depends on when they make their application for the planned unit development. Obviously, they'd have to get the land under contract and do those things and put together an application. But as long as they get the application in before the sunset date, then they're vested in the lot size and the text changed.
Okay.
So, obviously, as we've talked or deliberated, as Pam mentioned, a lot of us have concerns about, you know, the consequence of doing a text amendment that applies to the entire city that lasts a year, even though the last time we did it, it didn't seem to have any, like Mrs. Harris said, unintended consequences, which is a good way to put it. And we're up against a 120-day tolling period, right?
Well, not for this particular issue. This is text
Oh,
amendment,
right.
so it's legislative. So it's
So
up-
if we were
no
to
time frame.
request more information or, you know, do a continuance to the 18th, you know, I'm not sure what we would gain in information other than the council would have more time to sort of get their head around this and ask more questions of staff. But the other issue I think that that's important is that this lot has been undeveloped for many, many years. And obviously there's a cost-benefit analysis for the developer, whether or not it's going to be a profitable venture with X number of homes, give or take 66 or less. And where is that, I guess, is 66 the applicant's, sort of make it or break it suggestion? And would any of that information come to light if we waited 2 weeks and requested more information? If the council wants to move forward tonight, then obviously that's an option. But I think if you think back, Woodhaven was a PUD. And I don't think anybody has any, huge grave concerns about how Woodhaven was developed. And I think the PUD is a useful tool in good times as well as, challenging times. And so I'm trying to weigh, the benefits of getting a piece of land that is vacant, undeveloped, developed into the city, back on the tax rolls, as we all like to say. And I know people who moved from areas of like Beaverton or Southwest Portland to Sherwood to the Arbor Terrace because it was the only thing they could afford, and they didn't want to buy a condo, or potentially attached home, I guess. And so they moved into those homes, and they still live there, and they have 4 kids. So I see that as a great success, meaning if we're truly a family-driven community, and that's important to us to provide opportunities for families, not every family can afford a $350,000 house. And some of those houses that people paid $350,000 for are no longer worth $350,000. And, I want to be flexible in the opportunities to provide businesses an opportunity to develop without necessarily sacrificing, the things that we appreciate about the neighborhoods or that we live in or we visit. So I'm not exactly sure how to rectify that without maybe a little bit more time to think about it.
Yeah, I actually have a question, or possibly an idea followed by a question. On the second line of the ordinance, it talks about, because I think that part of the sticking point for me is the 5,000 square foot minimum lot size allowed for single-family home developments in all zones. We've flipped back and forth talking about Woodhaven, which is a low-density region, so that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about high density, and Mayor Middleton talked about, I like the single-family dwellings in the larger lots, which I think that we're in agreement with, but that's not what we're talking about, again, because we're talking about the high density. So could we, because rather than saying we're going to give this sunset provision for this development this time, and then if somebody comes back, then we'll talk about that again. Since we're talking about high density, we want to provide citizens an opportunity and potential citizens an opportunity to have the high density, single family and mixed, less than 5,000 square feet, because it fits with what is needed. It fits with what we view as the correct use of that zoning. Can we just take out in all zones and stick in high density zones?
But by all means, that's totally up to your discretion. You can limit it to high density. You can limit the lot size, the low bar that you want to go to. There's
and then
multiple
it doesn't
options.
affect that 5,000 square
The
foot
threshold.
requirement for the low density that we're talking about, the Woodhaven developments, that we still
We have to amend the code.
appear to agree with. So that's, and do we need a code change? And that's my question for
Those
staff.
are the language that you could change in the ordinance, and the proposed language could include components of limiting to medium density residential high, or simply limiting to high density residential. And in looking at the map, I don't think there's any other applicable property anyway.
Okay, we're running low on time because we end at 9:30, and
Okay.
can we put? Let's give it a 2-week postponement if council agrees with that.
Do we need to wait? Really?
Can we just
I
do it?
think we're done. We've done this before in Sherwood. It's worked fine. I think Councilor Clark's suggestion here is great.
If she can put that in,
Let's just
put
amend
it-
it.
let's amend it
move
and
on.
go.
Let's be done with
You
it.
good with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Solves the problem.
Go ahead. And amend
Okay.
it, Make
So-
the motion and.
Okay, so I'm not sure language-wise because you, if you would like.
Sure.
Because I'd like to make the motion, but I want to make it correctly so that it pleases council on what we discussed and how, what I heard and what they heard and what we want to hear. So, so I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2014-002, amending section 16.40 of the Zoning and Community Development Code relating to planned unit developments with the change in the second paragraph under whereas the applicant proposes to remove the 5,000 square foot minimum lot size allowed for single-family home developments in all zones. I would like to strike in all zones and replace with in high residential.
High density.
I'm getting tired. High density residential zones to replace in all zones. That is my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So we need to,
Excuse me, I need to do a roll call for the
yeah,
ordinance.
do a roll call.
Ordinance 2014-002, amending section 16.40 of the Zoning and Community Development Code related to planned unit developments. As amended, Counselor Clark,
Aye.
Counselor Langer,
Aye.
Counselor Butterfield,
Aye.
Counselor Folsom,
Aye.
Counselor Grant is absent, Counselor Henderson.
I have a question. Do we not need to vote on the amended ordinances and then adopt the ordinance?
The first motion,
motion.
I would interpret Counselor Clark's first motion, and that's why I was comfortable with the voice vote, as a motion to amend the ordinance.
Okay.
To delete.
And she
the
received
word-
a second.
She received a second, and then the council would vote
Okay, so-
on that, and that would replace in all zones with in high-density residential zones.
Okay, so go ahead,
Then
Sylvia.
the council would go through the adoption, whoever among you wants to move.
okay.
And then Sylvia would call the roll.
Okay.
So at this point, do you want a second motion and a second for the amended document?
I think we need to clarify, so Chrisanna's motion.
Is to amend.
Is to amend. My motion is to amend.
Will the seconder agree to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Counselor Langer, yeah.
And then, Mr. Mayor, you could just call for a voice vote.
All in favor of the
All in
amendment?
favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
And then, now go ahead and, if you're, want to adopt the ordinance, your regular protocol for reading the title.
Okay, I only have one. I might want an additional amendment. Do we need to remove section 6 sunset provision?
No. I don't think so.
Or do you want to leave it in?
Oh, because this is
Leave it
going to
in.
expire. Should we just keep it in?
Okay, all right. So now I can make my second motion? Okay, so I move that we,
Read.
what?
Read caption.
Recaption,
Adopt
adopt
the amended.
the amended. Or,
There you
you want
go.
to just do it? Okay, ordinance 2014-002.
Second. Nobody else? Now she'll do roll call.
Counselor Clark,
Aye.
Counselor Langer,
Aye.
Counselor Butterfield,
Aye.
Counselor Folsom,
Aye.
Council President Henderson,
Aye.
Mayor Middleton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next is citizen comments.
Could we have just a,
I have two.
I need a,
Go ahead.
Yeah, you just go.
Just go. Selma?
oh, I don't want to miss Selma.
Thank you, Council.
Okay.
So they got what they wanted.
If you want to, Selma, you can just close that laptop.
Thank
You don't have to look over it.
Good evening. I'm Selma Broadhurst, 21786 Southwest Sherwood Boulevard, Sherwood. I petition the city to remove the unattractive cement posts that are on the corners of the main streets of our city. Trying to put that nicely. I think they're obtrusive.
You mean
they
in
don't
Old Town?
enhance anything. Pardon?
You mean the ones in Old Town?
Yeah.
We call them monuments now.
Yeah. And if you need to recoup some of the money, I suggest you go to Monument, people who manufacture and engrave them for cemeteries and grave markers, or to designate areas like the refuge. You could use those for an entrance. You could have in front of some housing areas, you have monuments and they engrave them with so forth and so on. But they've had a lot of incidences. I'm sure people here can relate some, and they've been dangerous. I don't know if there's any major ones, but I have witnessed some. And that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Selma. And we turn that over to the city staff.
Tomorrow.
Discussion.
Get rid of them.
Mayor, do you want to? Sorry, do you want me to
Yes.
address that now, or
Yeah.
to come back?
Well, did
At
you
least
want to?
initially, I mean, that's something that I've heard in the year and a half that I've been here, in terms of finding that as a solution. I think Bob Galati is prepared to at least touch upon, if you take those monuments out, there's some lighting issues and things like that, but we can explore that further if the
That'd be
council
great.
wants to give us that direction.
Yeah,
So,
I'd like to see that and then come back to us.
is that
Is
the?
everybody okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's actually something that
Hated them from
I've
the first time I
found
saw
most people like that idea. I don't think I've bounced that idea off a lot of citizens, and I have not heard any negative
About removing them.
about removing them. So I'm sure there's someone out there that would not like that idea.
Put 'em on the
However, they do
Tonquin Trail.
serve a purpose, correct? Besides the obvious blocking
Yes.
purpose.
So we would have
So
to have a backup.
we'd have to come up with some design,
The small ones.
Mr. Galati. Yeah, well, something that would provide the barrier that we apparently thought
come on
we
up
needed.
for 2 minutes or less, and we'll come back with a more detailed
Bob meets Selma,
analysis.
Selma meet Bob.
Does everybody agree to go after 9:30 or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, as far as the monuments are concerned, those monuments also hold up the lights,
Some of them.
Right.
several of the lights and some
signage.
For the things. There's electrical vaults underneath them. If we're going to, we can go through and I can do an analysis and tell you pretty much what you'd be looking at as far as a technical solution to it, and come up with a cost estimate to give you a sense of what it would cost to redo the things.
Okay.
Nothing's impossible given time, money, and a little bit of technology.
Ingenuity.
So we can do that for you. Yes, they are somewhat of a nuisance. They are somewhat of a traffic issue. People have complained about it. It's tight. Yes, we know it. We agree. We just don't know right now how much it would take to take them out and replace the lights and the standards and everything like that. I don't imagine it will be a inexpensive proposition to fulfill.
Okay, thank you. You just bring it back, it's whatever.
Thank you.
Maybe in the meantime, you can paint the poles black.
Jan Hatcher?
Jan. Oh, that's Jan.
And Luke's still confused.
Go ahead.
Boy, that was quick. Do you need an address, or what do you?
Just your name.
Oh, okay.
You live in Sherwood.
Yeah, I live in Sherwood. Yeah, you all know me. I'm a pest. I'm back to the 12th and Glen Eagle and 12th and Sherwood Boulevard again. Apparently, people are not able to see the signs. I guess what I'm asking for, I don't know if I asked this or not before, but some rumble strips, maybe so that I can hear the traffic coming on 99. These hybrid cars, I can't hear them. I can't tell you again how many times I've been run over. My girlfriend was out yesterday at my house, and I heard this yelling, and I'm like, I go outside, and she said, "Did you hear me yelling?" I said, I heard somebody. And so she was out there yelling at people. slow down. So then she actually stopped somebody and did you see that sign? My friend was saying, oh no, I didn't see that. So I wonder, is there a way we can put a flashing light? Can we put maybe a crosswalk there or something? I can't believe there's 6 signs out there and nobody can see them. So, I mean, I'm thinking about moving too, but I don't know when, but it's just very dangerous. There's people that live, I've met about a dozen people in wheelchairs that live right there, Sherwood Boulevard and 12th. And I mean, I know they have problems too. And there's somebody in the apartments right across from me that's also in a scooter. Anyway, so, it's not just me, but anyway, thank you.
Well, in the TSP, I believe there's a traffic calming section in there, so we will be addressing that.
I know you don't do speed bumps, but there's...
I never say never.
Something's got to be done. I mean, like I said, I'm not ready to die yet.
Thank you. Gene Stewart?
Yes, Gene Stewart. This Sherwood Senior Center, Teresa can put together a report showing how many people are coming in and out. And I think the last average wasn't 150 people a day that are accessing it, coming in and out, and possibly even the number of meals that they're serving. I think it would be beneficial for the council to see. If Kristen maybe could sit down with her, she would give it to you like once a month. They've got the numbers. Let's use them. And I think it's been showing an increase over when they first started counting quite a bit. So that's pretty good traffic. It is being used more and more. The rentals are going up. So just don't forget the seniors. And I know we're talking more about it. And hopefully we'll have a work session on what city roles is so that we can get some policies set in place so we know what we're doing. As an example, like they're talking about developing a website and they need to get council okay on a name change, shortening it up. The problem is that the proposal is coming through a steering committee from Meals on Wheels who operate the center, but yet we got to come to the council to find out, is that, who's in charge and who can make these decisions so we don't. We've got a lady who's going to come and develop the website for free, so we don't want to turn her away. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. We'll start with council comments. Go ahead, Chris Anna. We'll move this way and then move this way.
So I will be respectful of time because I know it's late, but I had a couple things. So I'm not just lounging up here. I'm recovering from a couple of surgeries on my legs. And the only reason that I say that is because what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about struggles and encouragement because I think that everyone goes through lots of struggles. Some are really obvious when you're hobbling around, but my struggle right now it's very short term. And I have had a ton of people come out and give me a great deal of encouragement. And it has made all the difference in the world in working through a struggle. And I think that if we can identify struggles and give encouragement, it can just change the whole atmosphere for the people going through the struggles, for everyone. And we have lots of opportunities in Sherwood that we can give encouragement. And I have two that I would like to identify for citizens to have an opportunity to give encouragement in our city to others. The first one, we have a wonderful business owner. Michelle and Darren Howard own Sweet Story, and they have opened up a new adventure, and they need some encouragement. And this is how we can give it. They've outgrown they're right here in Old Town, and they've outgrown their facility that they've been in. They've been in there almost 3 years because they are so successful. They are amazing. They make all of the Oregon cakes for the elementary schools, for the cupcake walk. They are just a wonderful, wonderful small business here in Sherwood, and they want to move to the Lavender Tea House. They've got an investor that has purchased the Lavender Tea House, and they would like to retrofit that and move into a larger location. But they need help to do that. They need to raise $25,000 to retrofit all of their equipment and change the flooring and make that location fit. And so in the next week, they're going to do what's called Kickstarter. It's Kickstarter.com. And the keyword is Sweet Story. They're going to launch that this week. So you can go on to Kickstarter.com. And they have 30 days to raise $25,000 so that they can open their facility in the new location and be able to service a larger amount of the Sherwood citizens and beyond. Michelle Howard is one of the two founders of the Cash Mob to support the small businesses in Sherwood. And I just think this is a great opportunity to show encouragement to this business. You can go online and it's like kind of a PayPal type thing where you can donate $5 or $5,000. And if it will not fund until the 30-day mark hits. If they have made their goal at the 30 days, then it closes at the 30 days regardless, but then it will fund, and you'll get a notice that we funded, thank you for your donation, and they will move, and they will be able to service when we open up the community center, all of the people coming out of the theater in their new location. So I just really like to encourage everyone, myself, to encourage them by going on to Kickstarter.com. It should hit this week. The second way that we can be of encouragement to one another is the annual Egg Hunt for Hope is coming up. Now, the Egg Hunt for Hope isn't coming up until Saturday, April 12th. But right now, what is happening is they're accepting donations they have like a little silent auction area, and they're accepting any kind of donations, any kind of baskets, any kind of cash donation, to set it up where a lot of times they'll have snacks at the actual Egg Hunt for Hope. This year it's the 8th annual. This is sponsored by Leslie and Todd McCabe Real Estate Group, and they're sponsoring it for Brianna Dannon, who is a Sherwood high school teacher this year, and she is a breast cancer survivor, and she's fighting right now. So this is something that we can do for one of our own. And so I just really encourage you can go on to Egg Hunt for Hope, get all the information of who to contact, or contact Leslie and Todd McCabe if you have those contacts. But you can go online, the Egg Hunt for Hope. And if you also, I will be putting on my personal Facebook website the Sweet Story connection when it hits. Kirsan and Gregory Clark, if you want to pull that up and pull it off of mine, you can get the information there as well. So I encourage everyone to be encouraging of one another.
Matt?
Yeah, a few days ago at the YMCA, there was a very tragic event involving an infant who ended up passing away. And I just want to make sure the community understands that the situation had nothing to do with involving any YMCA staff or any incident that occurred on the property, other than the fact that the infant was previously suffering from some conditions that resulted in that, and had constant direct adult supervision, and it was just an unfortunate previous health condition that resulted in that. So just want to make sure that word's out amongst the community, and our prayers go out to that family, the infant, and all those involved, and the staff members that were directly involved in the situation. So hopefully everybody is on the mend.
So I'll try to be quick. I thank you, Eugene, for bringing up the senior center. I had a number of notes, and I want you to know that I went right into Joe's office the very next day. When he will bringing something to us in the next couple of weeks, talking about the name change that they requested for some marketing purposes and other things we'll explain at that time. The senior center acquired a door counter last year, and that was what Mr. Stewart was alluding to. The center is being used, and it's a very vibrant facility. And as I've mentioned before, I'm in and out of there probably 3 or 4 times a week, and it's just a wonderful place to be with the seniors. Last week, after our steering committee meeting, they invited me into the dining room because every Wednesday, it's from 1:30 to 3:30. I gave you the flyer, so I think that that's the right time. They are hosting ballroom dancing. And it's $5, and it's a lot of fun. And they let me just pop in because I had to go pick up some children. But it is a lot of fun. And one of the reasons they're working on getting this website is they want other seniors in our region and area to know that their events are available. But they have a live 3-piece combo, a string bass and a drum set and a pianist. And they are very accomplished and very good. And they will be doing that through the end of February. Hopefully we can build up enough people coming that they'll go ahead and keep it going. Also, ballroom dancing lessons are available on Mondays, and you can check. They have lots of fun activities. It's always a fun place to go to participate or to volunteer. And then just one other quick announcement. Tomorrow night, the high school choir is having their annual fundraiser for their choral program. They virtually have no budget for music or anything like that because of the very restrictive budget times. But so they have an amazing talent show that their choir students put on called Broadway Bits. It's at 7 o'clock at the high school PAC, and it should be very fun. And I just wanted to thank Tom and Julia for taking the time out of your already busy lives to come to the Long Range Planning Commission that the school district has put together, and we are serving on that together, and it is really going to be, I think, of great benefit to the community. That's it for me.
What time is Broadway Bits?
7 o'clock. Oh, and I wanted to tell you, the Cultural Arts Commission is now a full commission. We have 9 members, and that is very exciting. And we have a great, diverse group, great artists, visual artists have joined, great business leaders and developers that can help us with that as well. So it's a great time to be on the Cultural Arts Commission.
Anybody else? I have a couple of things I want to talk about that aren't nearly as uplifting necessarily as what Councillor Clark was talking about and Councillor Folsom, but we have had in our community over the past week a number of very concerning incidences regarding illegal drugs. And some of this, we've heard about either on the news or through staff, and what I want to impart to folks who are maybe in the audience or who might be watching this later is that I have a grave concern that we have people coming into our community and providing a drug called 25I, which is a synthetic form, I believe, and Chief can comment if he wants to chime in, a synthetic form of acid. And last Friday, Captain Dan Atkinson was his literal last day as a TVFNR captain. He served our community for almost 20 years, and I went in to see him and to give him a hug and wish him well. And he sat down with me, and he was really distraught because in his last week in Sherwood, he had been on a methamphetamine overdose and had 2 or 3 cases of this drug called 25I. And I was actually talking to Councillor Butterfield about, he had an employee who lives in our town who had to restrain an individual who was not clothed, and I'm sure you can imagine what that means, in an apartment complex where he was having, some issues and screaming and yelling and needed assistance but didn't really know how to ask for assistance. And because he was likely under the influence of a controlled substance. And so I'm just really concerned, and as Captain Dan and I were talking, he looked at me and he said, "What are we going to do about juvenile drug issues in our community? I'm really, really concerned that that we're missing something and reaching out to these kids." And we were going to have an extended conversation, but then they got called to an incident at an apartment building where a person was behaving erratically, and I don't know what was the result of that. But if you have the opportunity to reach out to your neighbors who may have teenagers, or I have a nephew at the high school, and talk to them about, the temptation may be great, but the consequence may be even greater. For some kids, it may be their first and their last high. This incident with 25I, which was over in the Woodhaven area, the reason why that potentially turned into something that was not tragic was a off-duty Washington County police or Washington County sheriff happened to be driving by and stopped and immediately called 911. And in a period of about 10 minutes, they went from having one patient to two and had to call an additional ambulance. And so if you have the opportunity to speak to students in classrooms, or you have friends who have youth, I'm just really concerned that this is going to turn into something that we won't be able to turn back. And I don't have all the answers. Chief and I had a long conversation about this yesterday. I don't have all the answers, but I can't ignore 4 overdoses and a career captain telling me that we have a serious problem in our town that we need to address. And I don't know what the solutions are, but I know that just like with the Seattle Seahawks, I knew I'd work this in somehow. If you put a good team together, you can do anything. And I don't know who's going to be on that good team or that great team, and I don't know what the solutions are, but I have grave concerns about the youth in our community and the potential for bad influence or individuals who come into our community because of a level of affluence and are distributing this drug, which kids clearly don't understand how serious, very serious it is. And I'm not saying that we're, we have, dozens and dozens of this happening every day. But as we grow and as people move into the community and as we get larger, obviously these issues are going to be apparent in our community. And I don't want to be a community who said, I wish we would have done more. And I think we can do more. And I'd like to impart on anybody on council or staff or anybody who has an idea of how to do outreach or drug education that's available that, we could tap and make available. We need to do it. And the chief and I wanted to follow up on our conversation because, again, we got interrupted. But that is of great concern to me, and I couldn't ignore it happening 4 times in a week, and so I choose not to ignore it and to bring it to our attention and to ask for staff's help and the community's help with addressing these issues when they come up. And on a lighter note, we had the groundbreaking for the community center. Fencing is up, and really excited about them breaking ground there. It will be an amazing facility. Obviously, it'll take a little bit less than a year to build, but I think the anticipation will be great. The opportunities to look for federal and private grants are out there, and Robin is sort of the point person on that, and she's pursuing them. And that'll be a great facility for all different kinds of groups in our community, and looking forward to, dirt moving around over there. And I think that's all I have. So thank you for listening.
Mine's real short. I just want to thank everybody for doing the council business tonight. I think it really went well. I mean, we dealt with a lot of stuff here, and we got it done. I was surprised. And thanks for all the help from everybody. So, staff.
I also will try to be short, just a couple items, Mayor and Council. You heard tonight from our auditor about our CAFR, and for many years we've received the GFOA award for that. And Julie Blums came into my office late this afternoon and she said, "We got our budget award." So this is a big deal, especially to Julie and her staff in terms of putting this together. And they've changed, so now that we've got the 2013, and then there's room to add more. So this is the second of the three that eventually we want to achieve. So no pressure, Julie. I just wanted folks to be aware of that. Charter Review Committee has been working very hard. Both the mayor and Council President Henderson have been very active. Did you want to mention anything about that? You look like you do.
Well, I meant to bring it up at our last council meeting, and we sometimes just forget. One thing that the Charter Review Committee, and this is for the council to weigh in on, is something that sometimes whenever you renew your charter or potentially review your police station, you bring in somebody who can give you an independent opinion. And so the Charter Review Committee would like to request of council to have an independent attorney's office review any charter revisions or amendments that they'd like to make, just sort of as an outside look for the council, another set of eyes. And that is something they asked me to bring forward to you. Obviously, they're going to, make a recommendation, but they'd like to have an outside counsel independently look at it before, obviously, we draft a ballot measures. So, unless council has any concerns about, I'm not sure who that would be. I'll rely on staff to make a recommendation.
We could identify outside
Right.
counsel that could
Right.
help us take a look at that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'd want somebody that is familiar with charters.
Right.
And I've talked a little bit with Barry Elsner and Hammond, and they're supportive of the idea as well. So they would help us maybe identify some of those outside counsel.
Mhm.
But that came up at the Charter Review Committee that
Right.
I think one of the things is the model charter that the League of Oregon Cities has. Barry Elsner and Hammond was one of the key attorneys in putting that together. And that if we're going to propose any charter amendments, having a separate set of eyes might be useful, just from a transparency standpoint. And so we can do that if the council feels that that is the right direction to go. And I see lots of heads nodding.
Go.
So what I was going to mention wasn't necessarily that, but there will probably be an opportunity in February for the public to weigh in on some of the amendments that the Charter Review Committee is probably going to bring to you to put on the May ballot. And these are all election-related measures. So the issue of term limits is something that I think has been tossed around, and we'll probably get a recommendation to you to consider putting on the ballot. Going back to getting rid of the council by position election and going back to top vote getter. So if there's 3 positions open, everyone would run for those seats, and the top 3 would win the council seats. That seems to be the 2 major things they've spent a lot of time on since they started working in December. So they've been working really hard on those to meet that deadline, which is looming in May. So the only other thing I wanted to mention, as you may recall, I'm in the 3rd and final year of membership of the board of the Oregon City County Management Association, and we have our retreat at Silver Falls State Park this week, so I will be out of the office
Snow.
Thursday, and Friday morning I'll be back in the office Friday afternoon, but we have Wi-Fi there, and you can get a hold of me if necessary. But
Take your boots and
take
your
my
gloves.
boots, yes.
Chains, cars,
Yeah.
chains.
Hopefully the snow will wait until Friday night. So any questions for me or staff on anything? It's been a long night.
The only other
so-
thing was we had proposed a work session with the council and the Charter Review Committee on, was that the 20th or the 27th?
I'd have to check my notes.
Okay.
It's later in February.
Okay. So just an FYI for council that they wanted to have a review work session, just like we do with the Planning Commission or the
Yeah, I
Parks
think
Board.
they didn't want to necessarily hand off just a document to
Right.
you without explaining how we got here.
And get some feedback.
And give you some feedback and answer questions you might have. So, anything else?
Shut up.
Meeting adjourned.